possibly the most sinister land of Dark Souls world. In Dark Souls 1 it was known for its knights famous for their unusual fencing technique, and its ruler, Earl Arstor, surrounded by dreadful rumors. Though we never visit it in the game, Carim is a homeland for some really cool and charismatic characters. So it was always interesting, what was it like exactly? Though we know that Carim has changed quite a lot by the time of Dark Souls 3, in this video I'd like to discuss the old Carim, as I believe exactly an item from Dark Souls 3 has given an important hint to support some of our suggestions about it. So from info we had about Carim in Dark Souls 1 we imagined it as a grim land of wars, internal conflicts, some sinister bite-ring arts associated with Arstor, who was also the inventor of dreadful shotell swords designed to take advantage of Carimian fencing style that utilized the use of parrying daggers instead of shields. Also I must note that part about internal conflicts is a speculation about Arstor being mentioned both as Sir and Earl, which possibly implies that he took the title by force. And in Dark Souls 3 we can get an item related to Arstor that possibly gives us an important clue. Arstor's spear. One of the curses that festered within the belly of the Grotwood, and a terrible weapon favored by Earl Arstor. Its description mentions Arstor as Arstor the Impaler, which naturally reminds us of a historical figure dubbed as Impaler, Vlad III KazzArma, also known as Vlad Impaler, or Dracula, literally meaning son of Dracula, son of dragon, surname his father assumed after joining the Order of Dragon. So, Vlad Dracula had a title of Hospodar of Wallachia, or, more correctly he succeeded at claiming it for several times, in rivalry against Vladislav II, who supposedly killed Dracula's father to take the title. And what's so interesting about it is that the title of Hospodar can be roughly compared to such titles as Earl or Count. Basically it's Count Dracula in the vampire story, isn't it? And also Dracula claimed the contested title of Hospodar for several times in war against Vladislav II. First when Vladislav was away fighting Ottomans, later Vladislav drove Dracula back and reclaimed title and held it until his death in combat against Dracula, who then regained the throne for the second time, which would be somewhat similar to the speculation about internal conflicts of Carim and Arstor being referred to as Sir, since he wasn't the Earl initially, but made himself one in result of some actions, likely of military nature. However, that's not the only thing that might tie the Dracula's Wallachia to Arstor's Carim, though the other thing is more indirect. Yet I believe it's something we've all thought about, and there's a reason for that. So, I guess lots of people have had a feeling that Bloodborne's Yharnam is somewhat similar to what they imagined Carim was like. And basically the reason for that is Marvelous Chester, an NPC from Dark Souls 1's DLC, who likely came to Wallace Isle from the future and was pretty likely hinted to be a Carimian, as he used the Carimian sniper crossbow. His Victorian-era attire naturally reminds us of Bloodborne, so I guess lots of people imagine future Carim as something Yharnam-like. And another indirect, yet peculiar thing is that name Arstor is possibly derived from Germanic root meaning doctor, or possibly Latin root ars meaning art/skill/craft/power combined with Proto-Germanic store as meaning large or great. So, doctors and guys designing and crafting their custom weapons and special equipment, bite rings and shotells in case with Arstor. It sounds like Bloodborne even to me. And I haven't even played it since I don't have PlayStation 4. Basically even before info on Bloodborne was released, I had already been imagining Arstor being something that is similar to Bloodborne's hunters, as he's depicted as sinister guy who designs his deadly weapons and rings on his own as he needs something that has never been created before. He's facing something new, and likely some terrible beasts that poison, tear your flesh and curse you. Basically there's somewhat the same feeling about Chester and his gear disguised as clothes. In addition to that, Carimian fencing technique that didn't use shields is rather similar to concept fighting in Bloodborne, which is more dynamic than that one of Dark Souls, as it's pretty much shieldless and encourages more dynamic and aggressive gameplay. So I believe it's not just a coincidence that we get somewhat Carimian impression about some of Bloodborne things, but actually that FromSoft had the similar concepts for these things from the start. And now returning to Wallachia, we know that FromSoft team actually visited Romania for reference, when working on Bloodborne, So Wallaka is pretty much among the inspirations for Yarnam, and if Yarnam is similar to Carim, it's yet another indirect link between Wallaka and Carim, Dracula and Arstor. So having all of this, I guess it's really likely that Carim was at least partially inspired by Wallaka and that it's ruled exactly by Earl's reference to hospodars of Wallaka. And now moving on to the second part of the video, I believe that Vlad Dracula could be an inspiration for Arstor, so his appearance may be used for Arstor's cosplay. Basically, is the certain similarity between the dubious Carim face reset that's said to have features associated with Earl of Carim, Arstor and Dracula's portrait? Not sure myself, but maybe those longer noses and other features the Carimians have are from that portrait. So, as for cosplay, I made two options of characters' appearance sliders modeled from Dracula. I'll explain why there are two, and one abstract Carimian that I tried to make similar to dubious Carim, typical Carimian face of Dark Souls 1. As for Dracula, I'll also release a video with cosplay of historical Vlad Tepesh separately. Let's start with the sliders. I'll place text notes without narration, so pay attention. Vlad Tepesh option 1 is modeled on this portrait. So-called Habsburg lip, according to the portrait. So this was the first option modeled on this portrait. The problem with this portrait is that it's repainted from the lost original already after the original portrait was lost, and that was also after Dracula's death. And it's redrawn by the guy who claimed he saw the original, yet he added so-called Habsburg lip, pragmatism, to the portrait, though this feature was never mentioned on other, earlier pictures of Dracula made when he was still alive. Probably painter decided that Tepesh had that Habsburg family trait, thinking that Tepesh was Hungarian. So I made another option of this face with ordinary lips. And now let's move on to the dubious Carim option. Now let's discuss the equipment. Well, as for weapons and runes, it's pretty easy. Naturally it's double shotels, Arstor's spear and a parry and dagger as weapons. As for the rings, there are two options. Either all 4-byte rings, as it's said in Dark Souls 1 that they were commissioned by Arstor, or 3 single-byte rings and a red deer stone ring as in Dark Souls 1 it's said to be originating from Carim. I'd also use some tools like throwing knives, bombs, etc. As for the armors though, it's more difficult since we have no info about Arstor's armors, so there's room for many options, but in this video I'd like to tell my thoughts on this matter and present and explain my choices. So, the first point is that I guess we can't use such Carimian armors as set of favor, as it is associated with Lautrec and related to Fina, not Carim. And we also pretty much can't use Morn's set as it's pretty likely appeared sometime after Arstor and is associated to Morn, Archbishop's apostle. Ordinary knight armors won't make it either since they're too simple looking for Earl of Carim, and elite knight armor is more noble looking but is strongly associated with Arstor, so not an option too. So, the first set that I'd suggest is Leonhard's set, without headpiece, as it gives some noble feeling about it and yet it gives impression of something designed for combat with some elegant fencing style. Ragged mask is pretty much optional here, I just added it to emphasize that elements of the set are designed for combat despite their looks and each piece has some practical use, even though the actual description of the set pretty much tells that it's somewhat too noble to be a military wear. And the next set hopefully develops such impression further, maybe something that can be compared to Bloodborne Hunters, as I'd like it to fit the image of Arstor as guy who actually puts a lot of thought in his equipment and designs some unique things he requires for combat. Impression of a professional with custom tools, so it's fallen knight armor, soulsword gauntlets and undead legion leggings. The elements of armor beneath the cloth reveal some noble impression, and at the same time all the belts, various tools attached to the armor, some bandages wrapped around arm, single gauntlet, belts on the leggings give impression of something really practical, custom made to fit some particular purposes. Ragged cloak looks like it has seen some combat, gives impression of experience, and altogether I think it's the most fitting set for Arstor, who's famous for designing his custom equipment for combats himself. Really practical things as shotels that can reach beyond enemy shields, thus taking advantage of the unusual Carimian shieldless fencing technique, who gives impression of practical man and professional, and at the same time armor chest piece has some noble looking elements, so I guess it's really fitting set. As for other options, I tried the sunset set, which really looks more like knight armor, and also gives impression of some sloppiness, like that of professional focused on the practical use of the things rather than looks, though in case with this armor it's more about being simply mad, plus its lore doesn't really have anything related to Carim. It's associated with Twilight Realms, so it's not really the best option. And if we focus more on noble looks, I guess the Drake Blood set is a really nice option as it gives really noble, maybe a little ceremonial look, gives impression of an aristocrat knight on the battlefield. Thanks for watching, I hope that you liked the video. Also check out other cosplay, lore, inspirations or etymology videos on my channel.